Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin, and I'm your host. And have with us the amazing Donna Jackson. As most of you know who listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I make it a habit to talk to my guest a little bit before we actually get started. And halfway through my discussion with her, I was saying to myself, I should be recording this. This is absolutely amazing information she has to share. But unfortunately, as you guys know, we only have about 15 minutes. She is, this is again, Miss Donna Jackson. She's the Director of Membership Development at Project 21, one of the nation's oldest Black conservative think tanks, is based in Washington, D.C., and promote, what you might say, basic conservative values. I don't know why people would call them conservative values, because really, this is pretty much common sense stuff. Capitalism, less government, less regulation, pro-family. Just seems like a lot of common sense stuff. So why did you feel a need to say, oh, this is a Black conservative think tank?
I tell you, I got involved because I was listening to a lot of the narratives that were on TV about corporations not paying their fair share of taxes, this need that every African American is sitting at home waiting for government assistance. And, I just couldn't phantom not getting involved. I never thought that this would be the direction of my career. My career was always in finance and accounting. I believe that, corporations hire people. As much as people would want to talk about the poor, and I'm a big advocate for the poor, but as much as people would want to talk about greedy corporations, it's not greedy corporations. These are individuals. These are families. These are people that hire people. They fire people. They promote people. They give people opportunities. This is how we as a community are able to get economic wealth, decrease wealth gaps. And so when I was hearing a lot of this misinformation, I just had to get involved and at least combat or give a wider picture of really what was truly going on. Mm-hmm. Because I think what you have, and it happens too many times, people will give you one set of information, and that information may not necessarily be false, but it's not the whole picture. And when you're sitting there and you get people fixated on this one, we're worried about this individual and we think they make too much money, and I'm fixated on making him pay. That means I'm not using all of my power to be innovative and create industries. Because this government that we have, actually, when they send you a check for free, what they're essentially doing is paying you not to innovate. They're paying you not to create industries. Most people in their lifetimes, if you look at Ford, you look at Fred Smith of Federal Express, you look at Sam Walton of Walmart's, they all created their wealth in their lifetime. But if I tell you as an African American that the only reason why you're not producing because you did not get wealth passed down, well, then why would I try? Because I think that I can't produce the same thing. Now, one of the other things that always bothered me is this notion that somehow if you're poor, that means you're stupid. It does not mean that at all. In fact, you have to be very smart to make it in this country on so little resources. Well, that same innovation that you use and being able to survive with those little funds can be turned into a business, into an industry, because you understand the nuts and bolts of how things work. And it was individuals like that, like a Sam Walton, like a Fred Smith, like a Ford, like a Honda, who were actually poor, that wanted to sit down and figure out how to make things better. They are the ones that created these industries. African Americans have that same ability, but people have us so fixated on what these people did to us that they're not paying attention of what we are capable of doing. You know, they talk about Black Wall Street and how that was a terrible tragedy, and it was that it got burned down.
Mm-hmm.
And they fixate on the race. But you know what the question they never ask? How did we have a Black Wall Street in the first place? And how do we have another Black Wall Street? That's what we should be focused on. And that's the reason why I got involved in activism, because I want people to know that they have the ability in themselves to create industries, industrial complexes in our community. And it has nothing to do with the amount of resources or where you were born into. It has to do with your drive, your ambition, your self-esteem, and then your ability to say, I can. And so we have those resources available to us.
You know, as you were speaking, ma'am, you know, I was thinking about at least how I was when I was coming up. I was always introduced to a lot of the Black figures who were fascinating, but they always seemed to have a complaint. You know, as you said, oh, this happened to us, and this happened to us, and we need to do this, and we need to do that. It wasn't until later in my life I learned about people like Madam C.J. Walker, A.G. Gaston, even Paul Cuffey, going back to the 18th century. My father introduced me to him. 18th century, there was slavery still around, and yet that man was, as you said, he took the few resources he had and boom, created a very profitable business. Do you think there's a deliberate attempt to sort of, well, let's not talk about a lot of these absolutely amazing Black business folk, entrepreneurs, or what do you think it might be the reason why we're not hearing much about them?
Well, absolutely, it's a deliberate attempt to keep a permanent government-dependent underclass. Because if I tell you you're not capable of something, then you don't realize how strong and what you have inside of you. You know, you were talking about Madam C.J. Walker. She was the first woman millionaire ever, not first Black millionaire, first white millionaire. She was the first woman millionaire of any race in the United States. Now, we don't talk about that because we want people to be focused on slavery and thinking that that's all we are, so we can build up that rage. If you're full of rage, you're full of anger, if all you're thinking about is getting back on at this person, you're not thinking about innovation. You're not thinking about what you're capable of. Because if all of my attention is focused on this individual, then what attention do I have that's focused on my ability? And that's why they purposely do that. You know, when you were talking about that, what people really need to understand about regulations is, you know, the government will say, well, we're trying to help you. And they say that about everything. Regulations are designed to create barriers so that people can have entry into a specific area. So if I create a regulation, I have to have more resources to get that business off the ground. Now, if I'm a big corporation and I have tons of money, then I don't mind if the government puts 20 regulations. But if I'm a small business owner that's trying to get an entry into that industry, then I don't have all of that money to get into the industry, because the amount of money that has nothing to do with the product I'm selling
Mm-hmm.
but it has to go to government regulators, then I have lost all my resources to be able to bring that product to market.
Right.
And so when they're sitting there and they put things up, like I'm from California. In California, they had this regulation that said that high school kids couldn't get a job without a permit.
Hmm.
Well, they weren't trying to be good, diligent individuals and help making sure high school students could, balance their schoolwork and work. They did it so that they can keep high school students out of the market because all of the illegal immigrants that were coming in were taking those what we considered entry-level jobs for teenagers, and they were working those jobs to take care of their families.
Hmm.
So you need to really realize what the goal of regulations are. They're not to help you. They're not because the government all of a sudden had this moral compass that they want to make sure you're okay. What they're designed to do is create barriers. And those barriers keep you where you are. So the more regulations, the harder it is for you to get into industry and create.
Right.
The less regulation, the easier it is.
Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host. We're speaking with Donna Jackson. She's of Project 21. And before we continue with the interview, we only got a few minutes left. I want to make sure that everyone knows to go to my website, booktalkwithcorbin.com, Corbin, booktalkwithcorbin.com. See my other interviews, and Miss Jackson's interview should be posted in about a week or so. And I'm going to make sure that I share her interview with as many people as possible because she's put out some pretty powerful ideas. My sister, could you talk to us a little bit about what is Project 21 and how people can get in touch with Project 21?
Absolutely. You can find us easily on our website at nationalcenter.org/Project 21. Project 21 is one of the oldest and largest Black conservative think tanks. We advocate for capitalism, Black capitalism, economic upward mobility, less government dependency. We want strong individuals who have strong financial backgrounds so that they can have control over their lives. That is so important because every time somebody gives you a dollar, they send you a check, it comes with strings attached. The government says to us, we're going to feed families, we're going to send families checks. What they don't tell individuals is we'll help you in the short term as long as you never help yourself in the long term. So they create these barriers, means tests, asset limits, so that you are not allowed to save and invest and do what they praise affluent individual families from doing. Once you free yourself from these regulations, then you're able to be a creative person. And we are very capable. I love that you mentioned C.J. Walker. She was the first woman millionaire of any race. That means if she was capable, back then, we're capable of those same things, achieving that same level. We don't have to be entertainers. We don't have to be athletes, which is fine. But we need to remember, we started universities in Egypt. We started math, engineering. We did that. And people need to get past that barrier that's thinking that these are white dreams. These are not white dreams. These are our American dreams, and we are just as entitled to the Constitution as anyone else. What we have to do is overcome that slavery thinking. We need to get out of the wilderness into the promised land. And that is the biggest barrier that's holding us back, because we think that we need someone's permission to achieve, and we don't.
Right. Folks, I'm going to end it right there. That was powerful. That was powerful. Sister, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I hope that we can arrange a time for you to come on again sometime and maybe talk more about capitalism, business, and entrepreneurship.